Uh-oh, Peter. Here we are at another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies. Good morning, sir.
Definitely. Good morning.
Definitely. We are on episode number 394. 394. Today's title of the episode is Extraordinary Lease Option Strategy for Rookies. Extraordinary. Or extraordinary, however you say it.
Well, you say extraordinary. It really is extraordinary.
Yeah, it's extraordinary lease option strategies for rookies. Here's the description.
Mm-hmm.
Forget everything you thought you knew about buying real estate. Ditch the hefty down payments, hard money, and expensive real estate training that takes way too long and causes gray hair and divorces. Step into the game tomorrow and start getting profit checks within 30 days. This one single podcast episode could explode your income overnight if you do it. If you refuse to sit on the sidelines another minute, join us now and see how easy you can do this part-time for a full-time income. Once this door cracks open for you, you will reveal a secret path that will put any renegade real estate entrepreneur in the fast lane regarding profit. Got tongue-tied there. All while unlocking doors that were slammed in other investors' faces. Learn to access and profit from properties you normally wouldn't qualify for. Frankly, wouldn't find. And when I do this, it leaves my competition speechless. Every time. So let's get started so I can show you what I mean. So before I start, Peter, what did you just plug in or do whatever? Because it's got a little bit of a feedback, like an air noise.
I had the headphones, my earbuds, and they weren't all the way in. So I pushed it all the way in. So what happened? Maybe it's
so you're all right because it was big. I see what happened. You're all set.
Okay.
All right. So here we go. A little bit of housekeeping first. Let me see here. So I put a different link in the description today. This week, aka 2 nights ago, I did a brand new webinar that I have not done before. And I put that replay in the chat or wherever you're reading the description because it's apropos to what I'm talking about today. In other words, it's related to what I'm talking today. So there is a full couple-hour training in there for you where I go over all these details. But today, I'm just going to kind of keep it high level. And if you want to know more and you want to dive in and know how to do this, that training is there. Okay? Also, if you have any questions, we record on Thursday mornings, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And when we do, we live stream to YouTube, to Facebook, and LinkedIn. So you can go there on Thursday mornings, and if you find us, just go to Flipping Houses for Rookies on any one of those platforms, and you will find us live. And if you have any questions pertaining to the podcast, you can pop them in whatever vehicle that platform gives you to type something, and it will come directly to me during the podcast. I usually only refer to questions about the topic on the podcast. If you have any other questions, you can do one or two things. You can go to WhatsApp Messenger and type in "Let's Talk Real Estate," and we have a group of 100 and something people there, and you could either get my help or plenty of other people that follow my system to help you there, or you can go to flippinghousesforrookies.com, top right-hand corner, hit support, and send us a support ticket, and we will get back to you on that if it's a personal thing. Okay, so Peter,
Yes, sir.
it occurred to me a few days ago in some odd thought, because I wasn't thinking about the podcast, I was thinking about something else,
Mm.
that I don't think, well, you're gonna say no, this is not true. I don't think we talk about the lease option deal too much enough. And here's what I
Oh,
mean. We
okay.
talk about the slot deal, which is a lease option transfer,
Yeah.
and we talk about selling on a lease option.
Yeah.
But we don't. I don't think we talk enough about the lease option strategy, which means that you would uh, lease a property with an option to purchase or a promise to pay, and then sublease it.
Hmm.
Okay,
Right. Yeah. When we stay in the deal.
that's where we stay in the deal. Yes.
Well,
So
yeah. So we talk more about slot deal, transferring it, kind of walking away, taking our money. See you later. But today, you want to talk about how we stay in the deal.
right. So let's start
Okay.
there. Let's
Yeah.
start there. So a slot deal is an acronym that you and I created, and it means a sandwich lease option transfer.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it's wholesaling lease options.
Yep.
Right. So you would go to a seller and you would say, you want full asking price. You want $300,000 for a $300,000 house, regardless of how much they owe. That's what they want, and they won't give you any equity.
Mm-hmm.
What you do is you would do a slot deal with them. You would do a lease with an option with that seller, and then you would go find a buyer that would fulfill the lease and the option for a profit.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're going to buy the house or promise to pay $300,000, it's likely we'll go sell the house for $310,000.
Yep.
The buyer will give us a $10,000 quote unquote deposit, which is really, or down payment. It's really a non-refundable option consideration deposit, which is,
Mm-hmm.
there's plenty of podcasts on that. So
Yeah.
you can go listen to one of our other podcasts and we'll explain that. But in this particular case, you would make 10 grand for finding the seller, finding the buyer, and generating 2 documents. So
Mhm.
basically, you're not even buying and selling the property, you're buying and selling the option. So you would give your seller $100 option, non-refundable option consideration deposit of, say, $100.
Mm-hmm.
You would go find a buyer that would give you $10,000 because they want to live in the property and they're going to use it, and they would pay you $10,000. So if they're going to pay you $10,000, your offer to them is, I'll give it to you for $310,000. They put down the $10,000 as a non-refundable option consideration deposit, and they owe the seller now $300,000. You put all the paperwork together, you walk away.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's what we don't talk about enough. So when you're on the phone with the seller, oh, by the way, we have attached to this slot deal a thing that we call the Grand Slam offer. Right? So I did this the other day. I don't know if it was on the podcast. I think I did this on the webinar that I put in the link. So the property's worth $420,000. Seller owes $410,000.
Mm.
This is, I'm going to tell you, very common because there are a lot of properties where people overpaid during COVID that are coming on the market now. So they owe too much, or they're trying to get money back. So the numbers are too high.
Yep.
This is where the slot deal would work in. Normally, you would throw that deal in the trash. Okay. So I did this deal, which the link is in your description. I did this deal where we actually promised to pay. Now they owe they want $420 and they owe $410.
Yep.
I did this deal with the Grand Slam offer and showed them how they can get $604,000 for that property in a 3-year period.
Yep.
Okay. And it's all legitimate numbers. It's just plain math. And when you learn how to do that, and oh yeah, by the way, when you do that deal, you make 20 grand.
Mm-hmm.
So the seller has a piece of property that they're going to be negative $40,000 to $60,000 in closing costs with because
that's
they
the
owe too
problem.
much,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you're going to so they're going to be negative 40 to 50 grand or 60 grand.
Hmm.
You're going to tell them you don't have to be negative. I'm going to show you how you can take that $420,000 and turn it into $604,000 over the course of 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
The offer, when we go through the offer, the seller actually feels foolish to not ask you at least how you got your numbers. And too many of them say, for that kind of money, why would I ever want to sell the property?
Mm.
Even if they want the money for a down payment on another house or something else, they'll go find that money somewhere else. Because the money is so big on this Grand Slam offer that it just crushes any other offer. So we've talked about that in the last several episodes. You guys should already probably know about that. But here's where this podcast is going to start. So you're talking to your seller and you're telling them that you want to do a slot deal with them, which means you're going to go find them a buyer. It also means that they technically manage the deal, which really means they collect the money and pay the mortgages. And if there is a problem and they get a phone call, they get it. It shouldn't be that way, but if it does, because when we do our leases, there are no landlord obligations, right?
Right. But they still have the deed, so they would still feel some obligation, some connection.
Right.
Because it's still their house.
So in the script, which you should have by now, because I've been giving that away continuously. If not, then just go on last week's podcast, and there's a link there, and you can get the calculator and the script and all that stuff for you. It's not in this week's description, but last week, podcast number 393. Anyways, here's what I do. When the seller says to me, I just want to walk away, I don't want to do anything about it. My response is, well, I can definitely do that, but you have to give me 15% worth of equity and 20 to 25% worth of cash flow for me to stay in the deal. And I tell them, otherwise, I don't stay interested in this property, and it makes problems, because if I'm not making money, then why would I want to pay attention to your property?
Nope.
Right? So that usually converts them, and probably about 30% of the slot deals will convert to that. 25 to 30% will convert to that, right? So when you're a rookie, you should start out with the Grand Slam offer script, which is in podcast number 393. The download link is there, so if you go back to that, you can get it. You should start the script off with that, and then as you go down the script, you'll get into a conversation about what we call the rent to own or the lease option transaction, which is still a sandwich lease option. The difference is you get paid 15% worth of equity and 20% worth of cash flow. Now, I have to say this. This is getting 15% worth of equity is like shooting fish in a barrel. I mean, it's just ridiculously easy. And the reason why is because you can show, and if you use the scripts that I'm talking about, you can show the seller that if they're going to sell it on their own for sale by owner, it's going to cost them about 10% in closing costs, and they're going to screw it up because they always do. Or if they sell it with a realtor, they're going to use about 15% of that money for closing costs. So the 15% is money that they think they had, but they really don't, because they need it for the transaction fees. So if they give you a 15, so if I have a $100,000 house and I'm selling a $100,000 house, 15% of that money, which is $15,000, is going to go towards closing, and I'm only going to net $85,000.
Right.
So if you say to a lease option person on this transaction, I'll give you 85%. That's their full offer. That's what they would get if they sold the house on the regular market. So they're getting top dollar anyways. So your offer is the same thing they're going to get everywhere else.
Right. Without all that aggravation.
And people tromping through the house and all the things that they don't like. right? Unpredict on loans closing, unpredict on when they can move, can they go get another house, like all this stuff, all these maybes, maybe this will happen, maybe that'll happen, right? Come into play on that transaction, and people don't like that.
Hey, I got a question. Either I should know this or it just hasn't come up. But say this house, the seller owed $95,000. It doesn't have 15% of equity to give us. Is there still a way to do that? Because there's no equity there.
Yeah, you could do that with a slot deal. Sometimes I'll do a rent to own on those. It depends on the cash flow. But let's go through some numbers, and then we can address that later. Okay, so
Yeah.
I mocked up a deal here. So this is where we're at. So we talked about a slot deal. Seller says, I don't want to stay in the property. And you say, well, if you give me 15% worth of equity and 20 or 25% with the cash flow, I'll do it all for you.
Right.
You walk away, you have nothing to worry about. So the house that I mocked up here, or it's actually a deal, right, is worth $300,000. So if the seller allows us, it's not what they owe. You don't know on a lease option. You don't care how much they owe. You don't need to go into, how much you owe. You don't need to do any of that here. You don't need to go into a deal on how much you owe until you get down, because it's a slot deal, and then it's option deal, and then rent to own, and then subject to. So on the hierarchy, you don't need to know how much they owe or how much their payments are until you get down to a subject to deal. So you have none of those conversations until you get down to that transaction. So in this case, it's just a rent to own. So you don't need to know how much they owe, as long as it's not more than $300, and how much their payments are. Now, I will ask in the script, because you start the script off by saying, do you have time to talk? They say yes. Is the house still for sale? They say yes. Whose name is on the deed, and it's theirs, so you're talking to the right decision maker. And then the next question is how much do you want for the house? I want $300,000. Well, the only way that I could pay $300,000, and as is condition, without any landlord obligations or anything, is if I make monthly payments. Can we talk about that? And they say yes. So now we're talking about, you skip over the slot deal now, and you go right into the rent to own.
Why do we skip over it?
Because they're willing to take monthly payments. And they're willing. And so I go right into, now this is what I go right in the rent to own. Now, if they come back and they don't want to give us 15%, then we go back to the slot deal.
I see. Yeah, because both ways they have to take monthly payments either way.
Right.
But you're actually, well, the thing you're doing is you're getting the lower in the hierarchy. The lower you go, the more money you actually make, just the way they're constructed and built up. So if you can get down to the one a little lower, there's the monthly cash flow, all that's, and some equity. Yeah, I see why you would do that.
It's the more profitable deal structure for me. I'm going to start with that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Right?
Yeah. Well, that's what we're talking about this today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? So the seller's willing to give us a 15% discount on a $300,000 house. That's $45,000. So your offer to them, your option is going to be $255,000. Now, $45,000 sounds like a lot of money, but I'm telling you, if they sold this house, their closing costs are going to be damn close to that.
Right. But one thing I learned in all these creative financing podcasts and training and talking is it's not just the money. They're paying a little bit for the aggravation we're saving them, the problems we're solving, that part of it. It's just that. I was talking to my son the other day. He got a big offer at a company, and his current company will match it. And the wife wants him to take it. But even if it's a little less, it'd be less aggravation to not move your job. Right. So what's the difference? A couple of bucks to stay where you're comfortable, you know what you're doing, instead of some new thing crazy. So there's always the money and like the aggravation factor as well. And these people will pay $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 for saving them that. It's an important thing.
Right. Like, which is the reason why we
I got to go to Ohio in 2 weeks. Okay, I'll help you do that. What's that worth to somebody who's got to go? It's worth
Yeah,
something.
we did that for a girl one time. You know the more details, but they had an adult child that just had their second or third baby, and they needed help. So the mom and dad moved to their city so they could help them with the children, and
Yeah,
they
with
sold
6
us their
weeks.
house subject too. Yeah.
Yeah, 6 weeks. You can't sell a house in 6 weeks with a realtor. Very
Right.
rare.
Now here's the important thing. Okay,
Hmm.
we're not taking any money from them. They're already paying the closing costs if they do another transaction. So we're
Yeah.
giving them a full asking offer. So you need to get that in your head right away. Now, as I go down the script, I'll say to them, okay, so good. So as far as the payments go, how much do you pay a month now? And in this case, they'll say 2,200. Does that include the taxes, insurance, and the HOA fees? Yes. All right, perfect. That's how much I'll pay. Okay. And that's the negotiating. There is no quabbling or quibbling or whatever the word is. You just say that's how much I'm going to pay.
Mm-hmm.
If they say no, then you can negotiate how much profit they want to make, but that doesn't happen probably 1 in 100 times.
Mm.
So in this particular case, our option agreement is going to be $255,000, and we're going to agree to pay $2,200 a month.
Mm-hmm.
That's PITA, principal, taxes, and insurance. Now, we know that when we sell, we can build equity into this puppy, and we know that we can get at least 5% over the market value for an asking price.
Mm-hmm.
So 300,000 times 5% is 315,000.
Yep.
I would sell this house for 320, 319.9, but just for mathematical purposes, 5% is 315. When you're selling houses on a rent to own or lease options, you can go up to 10%. I strongly suggest you to go higher than 10%. Now, what predicates whether you should use 5% or 10%? What predicates it is the comps. So if this house is really worth $300,000, you don't want to go too high because eventually this buyer is going to be in the bank trying to get comps to get a mortgage. So you don't want to sell it for $340,000 and they're trying to get it comped for that.
Yeah, because the bank won't appraise it that high because they don't want to
Likely.
loan money if it's too much.
But if you could buy this house for $290 or $280, then you're going to want to add at least 10%.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But the bottom line is that I would sell this house for $320.
Mm-hmm.
But mathematically, it's $315. So let's do that.
Sure.
Now, here's the thing. And this, we could spend actually the rest of the podcast talking about this. I won't because I have a lot of numbers to go over and I've already touched upon this in many other podcasts. The first thing you have to realize is the seller probably doesn't owe $345,000.
245?
I'm sorry, $245,000 or 250. We're offered $255. They don't owe the $255. They probably, because of the COVID thing and appreciation, they probably owe less than $200.
Right. Because we don't want it to be over the 255, right?
Right.
Okay.
So the point is that their payment is less for two reasons. Number one, it's less money because appreciation took over, and so they've got a bunch of appreciation in there, which is profit. And the other thing is their interest rate is probably 3, 4, 5%.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that makes a difference to us. Not that we're going to sell interest because we're not doing that, but our payment in this particular case is going to be on the high side. It's probably lower than this, but just mathematically, it's $2,850. Okay, so that's a $255,000 mortgage at 5%. I think is what I did.
For the buyer, that's what they're going to pay?
I'm sorry. I said that wrong. I'm sorry. Their mortgage payment is $2,110. $2,110. $2,110.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They're asking us $2,200, so we're going to pay $2,200.
Mm-hmm.
We rounded it up.
Okay.
If we do that same mortgage at $315 and 8% interest, which is the current rate today, that's when the payment goes up to $2,150. I had it backwards. Okay.
So the payment to the buyer is what?
28.50.
Okay. So the seller is only paying 21 because the lower interest rate and all that stuff, but the buyer is going to be paying more for the house at a higher interest rate. So his payment is going to have to be that. So he's going to have to start paying that now to get used to it, because that's what life is going to be for him shortly. That's the
Right. So
reality.
you don't want to use rentometer. I go through this in so many support calls. Like the rent is 1,800, and the mortgage is going to be 2,800.
Yeah.
Well, they're not renting. When you sell this thing, you are selling it. The people are buying this property, which means your intention and their intention when you start is they're going to go get a bank loan.
Yeah.
So why would you want to have an $1,800 a month mortgage payment or a rent payment, and then they go get a mortgage and the mortgage goes up $1,000 a month? It's going to penalize them, and they're not going to want to go get a mortgage.
I'd be stalling.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that the payment is at least what their mortgage payment is going to be or higher.
Yeah.
I add $200 or $300 to the payment, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do on this deal in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But the bottom line is $28.50, and it was like $28.36 or something. I rounded up. So $2,850 a month is our income on this property. Okay.
Yep.
That means there's a $650 monthly cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
Just for the math.
Yep.
We haven't even done anything yet. This is just simple math. A mortgage at $255,000 at 5%, and we sell a mortgage for $315,000 at 8%.
Mm-hmm.
And when I do my payments, I do not take the deposit money or the down payment money off of it, because I don't do that until I sell the house. So I keep it in there. So if I sold for $315,000, I use $315,000. I don't take the money that they're going to give me down off of it.
Yeah, well, you're just putting in a little cushion to, I don't know, make it a little more realistic. A safety factor.
Yeah. The reason why I do that is because I want their payment to be less money when they buy and get a mortgage than they have with me. So I want a higher number. So I use the most amount of money, which is $315,000. I add a couple $100 if I feel like it, and then I'm going to show you how I do down payment assistance. I'm going to talk about that in a minute.
Right.
Okay.
But the money they give, that $15,000 up front, counts as their down payment when it comes time to tell the bank, yeah,
they owe $300. Yes.
Yeah, they count.
It doesn't matter when it is.
Yeah.
It could be 2 years from now, and it does. So
or two, we took it, but they still paid it toward the house, so it's okay.
Right. So what happens is the $15,000 they're going to put down. Okay. Anyways, money now. Money now is the money that the people are going to put down. The buyer is going to put down. Mm-hmm. In this case, it's $15,750 is 5%. So 5% of $315,000, which is what they're paying, is $15,750. To your point, that money goes towards the purchase.
Mm-hmm.
So when they have the option agreement, that money is considered non-refundable option consideration deposit. So basically, they're buying the right to purchase this property, but they're not obligated. They can walk away.
Right.
But if they walk away, they lose their $15,750. This is all 100% legal too, by the way. And you don't need a license to do this. You could do this without a license, because when you sign an option agreement, you're part owner of the deal.
Yeah.
Minority owner, but you're a part owner. Now, here's my point: is the option says that if you want to purchase this property, you need to give us a 30-day notice in writing. In other words, a letter saying that you're going to execute the option. When you send that letter, when the buyer sends that letter and executes the option, you're going to write a purchase and sales agreement so you can go to a closing. Because a purchase and sales agreement is a device that tells everybody how we're going to get from here through the closing.
Yep.
To and through the closing. It's all the rules and all the agreements in writing.
Mm-hmm.
The buyer agreed to this, the seller agreed to that, the bank agreed to this, the tax people agreed to that. Everybody's agreement, right? At that point, when you go from one document to another, so the $15,750 on the option agreement is option consideration deposit. As soon as you go over to the purchase and sales agreement, it becomes known as a deposit money. It's the same money, just different names.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter if it's 2 years later or 5 years later, they don't have to come up with more money later on.
Right.
Right. And the reason why is because the bank's job, once they appraise it for the 315, their job is to make sure you get $315,000.
Yep.
That's their job. So they'll lend 300, but they want the seller to have $15,000 into the deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so it all equals out. Okay. So money now, we got $15,750. That's within 30 days. You get this deal today and you sell it tomorrow, you get $15,750. And in case anybody's curious, there's a very special bank to put that money in. You have to use this bank for that money.
You have to open it in advance, right? Every morning.
Well,
you have to open
it's already open. That bank is already open. You already have an account there. So what's the name of the bank, Peter?
Hip National Bank, baby.
There you go. It's
I'm
your pocket.
I open mine every morning when I put my big boy pants on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okie dokie. Yeah.
All right. Now let's talk about which, by the way, I was going to start the podcast this way and I didn't. What I'm teaching you today is a retirement. This is early retirement. The only way you will ever retire, and I don't care who you are, I don't care what industry you're in, I don't care what country you're in, I don't care where you come from, I don't care if you're black, white, I don't care if you're tall or short, I don't care if you're thin or fat, I don't care if you're man or woman, it doesn't matter. There is only one way to retire. Money now, money monthly, money later. You need influxes of cash, you need money monthly, and you need money later. That's the only way you're going to retire. And this is a perfect deal to do that. So right now, we already have $15,750 in your pocket. Now we're going to talk about cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
So cash flow is the difference between what we're paying the seller and what we're collecting from the buyer. Right? No landlord obligations. We're not being a landlord. The lease says, by the way, if your toilet clogs, don't call us. And just to prove that to you, if you have a mortgage now and your toilet clogs and you call the bank, what do they tell you?
Wrong
phone number.
Wrong number.
Yeah. Right? Okay, good. So we have $650 a month positive cash flow. Are we good with that?
Sure.
Okay. Except I don't talk about this much because I feel like it's a bit complicated and I get too many questions, but this morning I'm going to talk about it. If you change one thing like what I did, one thought process in your head like I did, which I needed a coach to help me with this because I was doing this for 25 years and not even attempting it and gave away hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yep.
It's one concept. Instead of asking, because the reason why we ask for 5% down is because that's what FHA asks for.
Sure.
So this way here they have enough money, so when they go in to get their loan, you don't need more deposit money. You already have all the deposit money, and FHA will approve them because you already have 5% in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Well, how about if you ask for 10% down?
Yeah, but what if they don't have it?
Exactly. So what we do is we take 5% now, which is the $15,750, and we tell them we will finance them the other 5% over the course of the 3-year lease.
Mm-hmm.
So in this particular case, we're not charging any interest. We're just having them pay the principal. If you take $15,750, which is the other 5%, and you divide it by 36 months, which is the 3-year lease, that would be $437 a month. Okay, that's what we call DPA, down payment assistance. Okay,
mm-hmm.
You with me?
Yeah. Well, you're just it actually helps them in a way. If they pay that extra 5% over a few years, when they go to the bank, they need to borrow less. And
Yes.
imagine how much that's going to save them over 30 years. You're going to save them way more than $15,000 in the long run. So it's good for them too if they can do it.
We don't talk about this enough either, and I'm going to talk about this more because it's easier to say this on my webinars than to talk about how to do bank loans.
What?
You should use the 1% rule for a lease. That's been
Which is-
around for 100 years. So
Yeah.
if the selling price of the property is $315,000, that means your mortgage payment should be $3,150.
Ah.
The payment should be $3,150. Right? That's a 1% rule. That's what most people are using right now since COVID.
I've heard about that. So that's we don't talk about that. I've heard about it. So it's pretty valid, right?
Oh yeah.
It's cool. All right.
Well, if we were to take the monthly payment of $2,850 and add the $437 to it, we're going to be at $3,287. We're at the 1% rule.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're asking too much money for this property.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody that's going to buy a $300,000 property can afford to pay $3,200 a month because their mortgage is going to be somewhere around that.
Yeah.
Right?
Good.
So they're paying $3,287 a month, which is, we'll say, the 1% rule, a little bit stronger, but a little bit more. Now, here's what happens. The cash flow goes from $650 a month to $1,087.50. Okay, because we have $650 for the difference between what we pay the seller and what we collect from the buyer. And then we have down payment assistance of $437. So our cash flow, because that $437 is considered what?
Well, it's going to be down payment for them, right?
Which is
For them.
considered what? Which is considered what on the option? Non-refundable.
Oh yeah. Yes, non-refundable.
Non-refundable option consideration deposit.
So it's an extension of that in a way.
Yeah, so every time they give you $437, you don't have to give it back until the closing. If they don't go to the closing, they lose it.
Right. And you don't give it back, you give them credit and note that they paid it.
Right. It's not cash.
Yeah.
Okay. So is this making sense so far?
Yeah, and that also counts to the bank because you show them that they paid such and such. You keep the records and you give them a note that says they also paid this, so they have a bigger down payment and a less of a mortgage.
Okay, now we have money later.
Mm-hmm.
So let me see where to start here. So if they give you 10% down, they owe you $283 at the end of 36 months.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If they went the full 36 months, which I don't know if they are or aren't going to do, but I'm going to assume that they do because 10% down is $31,500. So they're giving us 5% now and 5% in monthly payments. So let's just say they go 36 months and they have 10% down.
Mm-hmm.
That's $31,000, $31,500 subtracted from the $315,000.
Yep.
We owe the seller $245,000.
Was it 245 or 255?
Yeah, I did that wrong. Anyways, we got $40,000 in back end profit.
So when the house sells, we only have to pay the seller that amount, his amount, but we keep the difference up to the $300,000 that we promised him.
Right.
Wow.
So we had $40,000 in back end money, or $40,000 in later money.
Mm-hmm.
So now, if we add all this up, we have money now at $15,750. If we do the down payment assistance program, we have monthly cash flow of $1,087, which equals to, over the course of 36 months, $39,150.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If we don't do down payment assistance, it's $650 a month times 36 months is $24,400. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So realize when you, in this particular deal, and every deal, you have a profit So if you bought a house for $250 and sold it for $300, you had $50,000.
Mhm.
What you're doing with the money now and the money monthly is bringing that money forward. So you don't have to wait till the end of the term to get to 50 grand. So if they give you 10 grand down now, it subtracts from the 50 grand. Now they only owe you 40 grand.
Mhm.
If you
Yep.
get down payment assistance and they pay 10,000, you're subtracting that from the $50,000. They only owe you 30 grand.
Yeah, but
So
to me,
you're just bringing the money forward.
but to me, that's a beautiful thing because who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? You know, Martians could actually find land and it's all over, or and California can fall in the sea. So having some money now is awesome because you did some work. You want to have some, but what a beautiful thing to fall asleep at night knowing you have $30,000-$40,000 coming down the road.
Right.
That's money in the bank. It's a piggy bank, big fat piggy bank on each house.
So if you do down payment assistance, you're going to get $39,000 at the end of 3 years. If you don't do down payment assistance, you're going to get $24,400.
Mm-hmm.
So that means the money later, if you're doing down payment assistance, you got 40 grand coming.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not doing down payment assistance, you got 54,000 coming. But here, these are a lot of numbers.
Yeah.
The point is this: at the end of the day, at the end of 36 months, you've made $94,900. I was going to do this earlier. 94,900 divided by 300. That means you made a 32% profit on this house. If you take $94,900 and divide it into 300,000, you made a 32% profit for $100 investment, which is the option consideration deposit money.
Yeah, but we didn't get a chance to spend all that aggravation renovating it.
Yeah. All right. So you would think that I would end the podcast here, right? No.
No, because
we're not done.
No. Yeah. What else, Bill?
We're not done, right? Because this is what we never talk about. We never talk about the deep dive.
Yeah.
Which is the purpose of today's podcast, which was extraordinary. This is the extraordinary part. Lease option strategy for rookies. Here's the extraordinary part. What I've done in the past, and you've seen me do this, what I've done in the past, I add to my option agreement. Now, I don't talk about this because it's a diversion from our regular system. Normally, we do this in other strategies. But I've done this, so I'm going to explain it. What I do is I add to my option agreement one sentence. One sentence. One sentence. How many sentences?
One, but now I'm starting to wonder how many words. And what does it say, Bill?
When I make a monthly payment, I get the principal reduction for that payment.
Why should you get that?
Usually on a lease option, when somebody's leasing to you, they would get the principal reduction. Like on a slot deal, they get the principal reduction.
Right, because they still have the deed. It's still their house, so they get it.
So here's what I do when I do this, because I usually do this with multifamilies.
Yeah.
Like a 2 or 3 family. I usually do a master lease, and then I sublease it and I landlord it.
Yep.
Right? So what I tell the person that I'm buying it from is, listen, no disrespect. I don't know you, just like you don't know me. They say they don't trust me. Well, I don't trust you. I tell them that right up front. Because they don't trust me, and they know that. So I tell them, well, the funny thing is that you don't trust me, but it's actually backwards because I'm the one putting up all the money, and I need to trust you more than you need to trust me because I'm putting up all the money. So here's my problem. If I pay you the lease payment, how do I know you're paying the mortgage? And I have a buyer that's under contract with me that if I don't perform, they sue me. So if I make my monthly payments to you, my lease payments to you, and you don't perform, I'm in the middle of a litigation, not you. I mean, I'm going to sue you too, but
Yeah.
I'm in the middle, and I don't want to be in that position.
Yeah, because if he
So what
doesn't pay the mortgage, the bank could foreclose, and you
That's
can't
right.
sell the property to the buyer, which you promised, and you have
The
all that
buyer.
money in Hip National Bank that you spent by
That's
now.
that I have to give back, and I got to
Yeah.
deal with litigation.
Yeah.
So I'm not doing that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make monthly payments to your bank.
Yep.
That lease payment that I'm giving you, I'm going to make direct payments to your bank. So you're going to need to give me that information, and I'll mail the checks to them every month. You can keep everything in your name, you do whatever, but those checks are going right to your bank.
And the bank doesn't care who's paying it. They just happen to get the
Nope.
money. Your name, his name, a
If
trust,
there
whatever it
if
is.
there's a difference, like in this particular case, their payment is $21.10 and I'm giving them $2,200, I'll send you the $90 a month.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's easy for me to say, but when I make that payment to the bank, every payment that I make to the bank, I'm getting the principal reduction because I'm making the payment, not you. And they always say, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
They never know any different.
That last sentence, because I'm making the payment. And I've heard you say that before. We talked about it. When you put it that way, like, I'm making the payment.
So I get the principal reduction.
Yeah. I mean, somebody could say, no, it's still my house. I'm getting the principal reduction, and that you couldn't argue the point. But there's a lot of risk on our end to do this and to handle it and to deal with the tenants, especially if it's a multifamily, that are not really buying it. We're just holding on to it. So that's part of what we get as our return for doing the work and handling situations or problems or fires or, the whole story.
So basically, a person, which is the reason why we do this, a person that has a 2, 3, 4 family house or more has landlord obligations.
Yeah.
They are going to want to go hire a property manager. Right. I am going to tell you, and I'm going to get poked for this, but I am going to tell you right now, if you think contractors are a nightmare, try property managers. Property managers are not that good. And the ones that are good have figured out how every single thing they do is an extra fee. It's not all inclusive, like you pay 10% and everything's covered.
So what else do they come up with?
Oh my God, fee after fee after fee. I don't even. I went through this with a guy in Meriden, and I went 3 months before I got money.
And then you fired
3 months before I got money, and then I got money for a couple months, and then I ended up firing him. Yeah. Hey, I ended up buying a multifamily house for my daughter because she didn't tell me what's going on. She kind of hid it from me. They went from April to September doing an eviction that should have taken about 6 weeks. It cost my daughter, I think, something like $12,000 between their fees for doing the eviction and the lost income. It was like $12,000. She got behind and she was going to lose the house, and I took it back. I spent $20,000 fixing it because the tenants that lived on the second floor was gross, and they completely were not being managed correctly from the management company. The management company says, well, it's your property. You should take care of it. And she's like, well, I'm paying you. You should take care of it. It's just gross.
Yeah.
It's just gross. Okay. So here's my point is the landlord or the seller that owns it is probably a burnt out landlord. And what you're proposing to them by doing this is, I'm going to manage your property, but I have a stake in the game. I'm not just a property manager charging you fees. Now I have a stake in the game. I'm part owner now, and I'm going to collect my fees and my money based on my ability. You're not paying me. We agreed to these terms at 245 or 255, whatever the number is, right? We agree to these terms, and then we agree that I'm going to pay your bank $2,200 or pay the bank $2,110 and pay you $90 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And you're done. He makes his money because the appreciation is up, and he's collected probably $100,000 in appreciation when I cash out in 3 years from now.
Yeah, because that 250 average, whatever the price is not what he owes.
Right.
That's what we're giving him, and he's paid the house. If the longer he's owned it, the less he owes, and he gets to walk away with. He's got his profit without the aggravation.
He didn't expect his house to be worth this much money. So to him, it's monopoly money. In today's environment, it's not like that all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I make the payments. I get the principal reduction.
Mm.
On this house, it's $4,528 per year.
Mm.
That's $13,584 over the course of 3 years. $13,584. Now, wait a minute, Peter. Wait a minute.
Now what?
I wrote one sentence in my contract. One sentence. And I made how much money?
13,000 something or other.
$13,584.
Yeah. So when the house sells, not only do you get the equity that was part of it, you get that on. Well, it's more equity because you paid it down, and it's your profit because you claimed the principal reduction.
And I have had people complain because I'm flipping houses for rookies. They think I sell my paperwork package for like $2,000, and they're like, "Why $2,000? That's a lot of money." One sentence made $13,000. Then my last move on this deal is the option agreement with my buyer.
Mm-hmm.
When I sell, and we've talked about this recently, but this is going to help you because you've had some questions about this, and this is what we will be doing from this point forward because this is new.
Okay.
What I used to do is if you pay me within the first 12 months, whatever the $315 or whatever the asking price is $315.
Yeah.
After that, I add 0.5% per month, which is 6% per year for appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
I decided that I'm not going to do that because I did research and I found out over the last 100 years, real estate average increase is 3% a year.
Right.
So 3% a year is 0.25% per month.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what we do. We're going to add in the option agreement that on month 1, the price of the house will appreciate by 0.25%. That's $9,000 for 12 months.
Mm.
Okay. Now watch this. You ready, Peter?
Mm-hmm.
If you do this on day 1, which is what's new for us because we used to do it on day 12, but I've come up with this new idea that we're going to be doing from this point forward. I've already done it once. I'm going to do it again.
Yeah.
You add 0.25% on the first 30 days. So if you buy in January and February, it's 0.25% higher.
So like at the end, after a month.
After 30 days.
Yeah. Okay.
You tell the buyer if they pay the monthly lease and the down payment assistance each month on time and get their loan within 12 months, you will give them back the $9,000 or however much. If they do it in 8 months, it wouldn't be $9,000. But if let's say it's $9,000 for 12 months. Are you with me?
Yeah. And
you will give them back the $9,000 in the closing by reducing the price back to the $315. So they're paying $315. Right. And then it goes up 0.25%. If they wait 12 months, it's no longer $315. It's now $324.
Right. So the price of the house would go up, but if they do the down payment assistance and they pay on time, you won't charge them that extra $9. It'll go back to the.
If they pay their lease on time, the down payment assistance on time, and they get their loan within the 12 months, you will give them back the first $9,000. What this does is it motivates them to do what? Pay on time.
Well, right.
So if they pay 1 day late in 1 month, what do they lose? $9,000.
Right. And you give them to the 12th to do that, or was it first?
Whatever the contract says.
Okay.
I do the 25th. I like the 25th. You pay on the 25th, and by the 1st, it's late.
Yeah.
Right? But whatever your contract says, if they pay on time the lease and the down payment assistance, and they go get a mortgage and they're ready to close in the 12-month period, you will give them back whatever they paid. In this particular case, if it was a 12-month period, it would be $9,000.
Right. They didn't actually pay that each month. It's just that the price went up, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
You'll give that back to them at the closing. But it motivates them to pay the lease, and it motivates them to pay their down payment assistance, because what used to happen to me before is the things would get rough and I can't pay the down payment assistance this month.
Mm.
And then I added to my leases and my option agreements, I added what we call cross default. It's an extra paragraph that's 3 or 4 sentences. What it says is, if you don't pay your down payment assistance, you jeopardize your lease agreement with me. You're in default. If you pay your lease late, if you pay your rent late, you jeopardize your down payment assistance and lose it. These
So
contracts are good.
either the monthly lease payment or the down payment assistance, either one could void the option. Wow, because they agreed to it.
It could void one or the other.
So that's in the first year. Do you continue that second, third year? Or?
No, they have 12 months to go get a mortgage and get their credit.
That's
After
good.
that, it goes up 0.25% no matter what.
Yeah, the first 9, the next 9, the next 9. Well, the thing that makes sense about that, and as a business person with some other business things that I've done, every time I have a problem, I go, well, next time I'm going to do this so I don't get in trouble. Next
Right.
time, so you're solving everything that could go wrong, that people could be, not doing what they promised and not leave us holding the bag. So it's covered one way or the other.
This is the reason why I say I make more money if they default than if they pay. All right. Now let's move on, because I got a couple more minutes here and we're at 58 minutes of the hour, right?
Okay.
Now let's do the entire deal for 3 years.
Okay.
You got $15,750 for down payment. You got $39,150 with the down payment assistance profit after the 3 years. You have $40,000 money later, which is $94,400. Your back end money, what I call the back end money, which are these other things we're talking about. Your principal reduction is $13,584, and your appreciation is $27,000. That means the entire deal you made $137,484. That means we made a 46% profit on a house that we paid full asking price.
It almost doesn't make sense, Bill. But I've seen you do it. I've seen the numbers. You make more money on the house than doing a renovation and all that aggravation.
Now, if you don't have thick skin and you don't want to hear me rant, then end the podcast now. Because here's my point for today. I just showed you how to make $137,000. It's simple math. Listen to this podcast multiple times and you'll hear the math. Okay? Go watch the training I just gave you that's 3 hours long, 2.5 hours long. Go watch it. The link's in the description. But the bottom line is that I'm not wrong with my math. It's $137,484. That number's not wrong. I don't care what you do, that number's not wrong.
We've taken this to our accountants, right?
Yeah. But in fact, that number is actually low, because when I do the principal reduction, I only do it if you had the mortgage for 12 months. And a lot of people have had the mortgage for 10, 12, 15 years, and the principal reduction is a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. $137,484 for 3 years. For a 3-year sandwich lease option that you stayed in. This is why I call it the retirement program. You did one of these a year. Okay, for 3 years, how much money is that? Right? Now, here's the point that I want to make. You made in a 3-year period $45,828 per year. If you take 137,484 divided by 3, that's $45,828 per year.
Hmm.
You with me?
Yeah.
If you break it down by hours, if you work 20 hours to get this deal, you made $6,874 per hour. If you work 20 hours to get this deal, you made $6,874 per hour. If you worked 30 hours to get this deal, you made $4,582 per hour. If it took you 40 hours to find this deal and do it, you made $3,437 per hour. $3,437 per hour. If it took you 80 hours to do this deal, now this is completely stupid, but if it took you 80 hours to do this, find and do this deal, you make $1,718 per hour.
Oh, that's not enough. No, that's not enough.
Now, wait a minute, Peter. Wait a minute. Let's say it takes you a whole month. You spend 40 hours a week for 4 weeks, 160 hours to find this deal. You're still making $859 an hour. Where are you going to go and make $6,874 an hour to do a deal? To do anything? To do anything?
You got to be Taylor Swift to do that.
Evidently. Evidently. Now here's my question. What's stopping you in life? Why aren't you doing this? I'm asking you this. I'm asking me this. I'm asking anybody that's listening to me. What is stopping you from making $6,874 an hour? Or on the low side, $859 an hour. Are you making that amount of money now with your income? Because here's what I know. If you had a job that paid you $6,874 an hour, would that kid's soccer game be more important than $6,874 an hour? Had to help your mom and dad do something, run errands, go get their medication, stop by their house. Would that stop you from going to your job and making $6,874 an hour? What's in your life that is stopping you from going to that job? It's like you have this job. It's right in front of you. It's easy peasy. If you've rented from somebody before and lived in a house and had a landlord, you know how to do this. I just showed you the numbers. You're renting from a landlord and you're giving them a lease with an option agreement and you're subleasing it. By the way, I should have done this at the beginning of the podcast. Where do you find this deal? I'm going to tell you right now, go on Facebook Marketplace and look for landlords that are advertising for rent. Go on Zillow and type in there for rent. You will find these deals left, right, and center. You call them and you start out by doing the Grand Slam offer script, which we've given to you, not today, but in the last 3 podcasts. We've given it to you. We've given you a calculator. We've given you everything you need. You don't need years worth of training. You don't need to go through the gray hair and the divorces to learn this. You already know 90% of this. And I just showed you how to do the other 10% to make $6,874 an hour. And if you really suck, which you do, we all do when we do our first deal, the least you're going to make is $859 a month. I'm sorry, $859 an hour if you work an entire month. So what's in your life that you can't do this? What's stopping you from making $6,874 in your life? What are you telling yourself? What crazy ideas do you have in your head that you're not making this simple where you could just do it? I mean, you could literally go on Facebook this afternoon, put in your area, your zip code, where you live, and there are people in there that say for rent, landlords, and you can message them and say, would you be willing to rent for a year or two and then sell to me? And they will respond. You do the same thing on Zillow. You can use creativereplay.com. You can find these people. So if you're talking to people, why aren't you doing these deals? What are you saying to them or not saying to them that you're not doing a deal like this? If you're not talking to people, why aren't you talking to people? Because you could make $6,874 per hour on a deal that could take, and it should not take you more than 20 hours. Once you find a deal, it should not take you more than 20 hours. So what's in your life that's holding you back to going to that job where you get paid $6,874 per hour? Because I'm going to tell you right now, if you had a real job that you had to punch in and you were going to get a paycheck for $6,874 or $137,000, I promise you, no one, your car breaks down on your way to work, you'd run. You get out of the car, you'd run. If you were starving to death and couldn't get there because you're undernourished, you chew your toe off to get there. If your kid was having a baby, you'd be like, I'll be there in a little while. I got to make 6,800. You know what I mean? I'm being facetious, but you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You would figure it out. And this opportunity that I'm talking about is exactly that. It is a job that you could have, a part-time job that will pay you full-time income. You just need to figure out what's the barrier in your way to keeping you from finding that deal, right? The formula is finding and speaking to a motivated seller, telling them what you do, asking them what's needed and wanted, and then giving it to them. And I just talked about that today for an hour. That's the formula. So why aren't you making that phone call today? Why aren't you sending that text today? Why aren't you looking for that person? Why aren't you waking up in the morning and saying, who, like Grant Cardone says, who's got my money? Why aren't you making that reach? Why aren't you reaching to somebody that might have this deal waiting for you? That's so damn important. Or what are you not doing that's so stupid that you're not even thinking about this? And I'm going to tell you right now, my final words. The only thing stopping anybody from doing this deal is their attention units. If your attention's on all the drama in your family, you're not going to think about this deal. If your attention's on your car broke down this morning and you don't have the money, you're not going to do this deal. If your attention's on your mom needs some pills that you got to get because she can't drive to the pharmacy, you're not going to do this deal. If you think that you can't do this deal because you need more education, you're not going to do this deal. If you think you have more to learn and you're not me, and you think it's skill that makes deals, you're not going to do this deal. You don't need skill with this deal. What you need is you don't need massive education. You need massive action. Because when you call enough people and you talk to enough people, this deal will just surface and it will fall in your lap and you'll know what to do because you've rented from a landlord before. It's incredible to me that these numbers are the way they are. It's incredible to me what people tell me happens in their lives. Family functions, birthday parties, things they find are important that supersede or get in the way or jump in the middle of them making $6,874 because they allow it. Their attention on making money is not that high. Some people are like, I don't want to make $6,874 a month. Okay, then why are you listening to this podcast? I mean, Why couldn't you do a few of these deals a year and for the next 5 years and set your life up? I don't care how much money you make. Why wouldn't you want to do that? My friend just started a program, and he's a done for you guy, right? He does it all for you. He advertised, if you have $100,000, I will buy you 5 houses that will make you $100,000 a year in profit each year. And he's going in his backyard. He take the person that signs up to his to this program has to prove to him they got $100,000, and he goes on the MLS, buys the property, does the transaction, 1% loan, like I just told you, 1% payments. He's charging $5,000 to do it. And like one guy, he just bought a house, paid $151,000 in cash. He gets his $150,000 back in 4.3 years, number one. And number two, he's making something like, I think when we did the math, it was something like 21.6% on his money. He's buying property for other people and just setting up portfolios. He's a portfolio king. So if you got $100,000, he'll give you a 5-house portfolio that will pay you $100,000 a year at the end of 5 years. So if he can do that, how come you can't? He's buying them off the MLS. He's not even doing any of these tricks. With that said, I'm off my soapbox. Flourish and prosper. Go find one of these deals. Listen to this podcast more than once. Go back the last 7 podcasts because we've been doing nothing but deal structuring and trying to help you to do a deal. Go check it out. Make sure you subscribe to us. Make sure you like us. Make sure you have any questions, you go to WhatsApp Messenger to Let's Talk Real Estate and join that group, or send us a support ticket at flippinghousesforrookies.com. Thank you for your support. Thank you for listening, and go flourish and prosper. You deserve it. Over and out.